It was just shy of 3 a.m. when the air began to pulse with the unmistakable roar of an engine. Jared fumbled out of a restless sleep, his ears pricked with every disturbance outside his window. Heart racing, he threw on a pair of sweatpants and stumbled onto his porch, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The throaty growl of a car engine shredded the stillness of his peaceful neighborhood, punctuated by distant howls of laughter that cut through the night as sharply as the screeching tires. Seriously? Who was tearing it up at this hour? A pair of headlights pierced the darkness, revealing a familiar, clunky Crown Victoria that had long seen better days. Jared's gut twisted. There they were, Kyle and Jake, the local troublemakers, bursting into a fit of raucous laughter, faces illuminated by the glow of the dashboard lights. The reckless bravado they exuded sent waves of irritation rolling through Jared as he recognized the look in their eyes, the unmistakable glimmer of mischief. "Hey, look, there's the Catman," Kyle bellowed, poking his head out of the window, a smug grin plastered on his face. Jared's stomach tightened as they stumbled out of the car, fueled by a mix of alcohol and misguided courage. "Why do they have to keep coming back?" he muttered under his breath, sensing the familiar dread creep over him. Kyle and Jake honed in on his decorations, hollowed pumpkins he had lovingly carved into whimsical cat shapes, charming fixtures that had brought him a sense of joy during the autumn season. To them, it was a game. To Jared, it was sacred. As Jared watched the intrusion unfold from the shadows of his porch, a swell of indignation lifted his spirits from the confines of weary sleep. These were not just casual mischief makers. They were young men who took delight in mocking the care that went into the small things that brought joy to others' lives. It was infuriating and deeply personal. Fueled by a newfound determination, Jared clenched his fists as the two boys cackled and tiptoed across his yard, oblivious to the storm brewing within the depths of his heart. Instinctively, he pocketed his phone, choosing a different route tonight. Instead of calling the police, he would take matters into his own hands and orchestrate his own reckoning. "Hey!" Jared shouted, stepping onto the grass, his voice slicing through the night. "What do you think you're doing?" The boys stopped in their tracks, shocked at the sudden authority in his tone. For a moment, they were silent, caught between surprise and the instinct to defend their antics. It was Kyle who managed a smirk, shrugging nonchalantly. "Just having some fun, man. Don't be such a buzzkill. Fun doesn't involve messing with other people's things." Jared retorted, anger boiling over. "You're ruining the one thing that brings light to these gloomy nights. You think this is amusing?" As Kyle sought an answer hidden in the depths of Jake's laughter, Jared's mind churned with thoughts of retaliation. Just moments ago, he had felt the sting of their mockery, but now intensity surged within him, filling him with a sense of purpose. As a final act, Jared pulled out his phone and dialed Mark, a close friend who had a penchant for knowing the ins and outs of the neighborhood, including a few alternative strategies for dealing with disruptive behavior. "Mark, you won't believe what's happening," Jared said, tension echoing in his voice. "Kyle and Jake are up to their usual pranks again. This time they're targeting my decorations." "Ah, the infamous duo strikes again," Mark replied with a chuckle. "But you're not going to stand for it, right?" "No, I'm not. This is getting old, and I want them to realize it goes beyond just a prank," Jared explained, feeling both empowered and reckless. "They need to face the consequences of their actions." "You're right. Use that energy. Document everything you can. A record could be incredibly useful," Mark advised. Jared hung up and glanced back at Kyle and Jake, who were now bickering over one of the pumpkins. The sight made a smile tug at the corners of his mouth despite his simmering anger. They were like children at play, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. The ripple effect of their actions was about to take a turn. Taking inspiration from Mark's words, Jared turned the lens of his phone towards the duo and clicked a few pictures, capturing their mindless antics against the backdrop of his once peaceful yard. He felt a strange mixture of vindication and amusement as he observed them. By documenting their latest episode of mischief, he would ensure it wouldn't be easily forgotten, even if they tried to laugh it off. "Come on, man, lighten up," Jake squeaked, releasing his grip from one of the pumpkins, which fell to the ground with a distasteful thud. Jared's heart raced. This was more than fun and games. It was a violation of trust and respect. "You're not just messing with pumpkins," he stated with a level of calm intensity. You're encroaching on everyone's sense of community. These little things matter." As he spoke, it didn't go unnoticed that Kyle and Jake were beginning to hesitate, their bravado fading from their youthful faces. The laughter that had once echoed in the yard faded into an uncomfortable silence as they exchanged worried glances. Suddenly, Jared caught sight of something shiny in Kyle's hand. "What's that?" he demanded, narrowing his eyes. Kyle was nervously gripping a crowbar, clearly intending to use it to pry up the decorations or wreak further havoc. No, that's not happening." Jared lunged forward, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Seeing Jared's genuine anger, Kyle stumbled back, dropping the crowbar, while Jake tried to step between them with an uncertain expression on his face. "We were just going to move the pumpkins around. It's not a big deal." "Right, because playing with unsecured tools at 3 a.m. in someone's yard sounds harmless," Jared replied, his voice laden with sarcasm. "The vibe in the air is anything but innocent." Kyle's bravado evaporated, leaving only panic behind. "We didn't mean to, just trying to have a little fun," he pleaded, his earlier confidence reduced to an evident tone of regret. In that moment, Jared saw frazzled youth in their eyes, a different side of them that hadn't clicked previously. They could wield their mischief like a weapon, but they hadn't stopped to think about the effects it had on others. As the silence hung thick with tension, Jared contemplated what to do next. His mind raced as he imagined consequences, ones that could deliver a lesson that never left the surface. And that's when an idea sparked. What if he entertained the thought of retaliating, not in anger, but with a touch of cleverness? With the ire in him simmering down, Jared decided to settle his storm with a twist of irony while teaching Kyle and Jake a valuable lesson. Instinctively, he pulled out his phone again. "Here's the deal. You two mess with my decorations and I capture evidence. How about we turn this into a little competition between us?" "What do you mean?" Kyle asked, wary yet intrigued. "I'll give you the chance to take your fun to the next level. Let's call it a midnight scavenger hunt," Jared proposed, relishing the look of confusion on their faces. "You two get to round up some ridiculous prizes from the neighborhood while I keep my pumpkins safe. If you pull off what mayhem you can without getting caught," he twisted his lips mischievously, "you win." "What's the catch?" Jake asked, suspicious. "If anyone sees you and reports it, the game is over," Jared replied, enjoying their apprehension as he dropped the energy of intimidation for the allure of friendly competition. "No more pranks after this until the sun rises, and I get to capture all the evidence I can." Kyle and Jake exchanged glances, and an air of defiance mixed with the thrill of challenge appeared in their expressions. "All right." Kyle's grin returned, and with it, the spark of mischief was reignited. And just like that, the boys who had once tormented the evening with their recklessness now took on the form of competitors in Jared's game, a game that had only just begun. As the two skittered off into the night, Jared couldn't suppress the grin that danced across his face. "Let's see if experience outmatches folly," he mused, turning towards the scattered remnants of his pumpkins. Little did they know that while they thought they were chasing trophies, they were instead being chased down a path towards self-discovery, one filled with shadows, laughter, and the reckless aftermath of their actions. As the night continued to unravel, Jared settled back onto his porch, anticipating not just the thrill of his own victory, but the transformation that lay ahead for Kyle and Jake. This wasn't merely vengeance, it was the fulfillment of a lesson that had to be endured. In this convoluted dance of chaos and community, everyone would learn that actions have consequences, and what might seem trivial under the shadows of a moonlit sky often carries the weight of truth in the daylight to come. The stage was set, the game was afoot, and the lessons woven into the very fabric of the evening would echo louder than the laughter of foolish youth. This wasn't merely vengeance, it was the fulfillment of a lesson that had to be endured. In this convoluted dance of chaos and community, everyone would learn that actions have consequences, and what might seem trivial under the shadows of a moonlit sky often carries the weight of truth in the daylight to come. As minutes turned into hours, Jared settled back onto his porch with a sense of anticipation. The sounds of rustling and whispered scheming drifted from the street as Kyle and Jake concocted their plan. The night air was thick with the scent of fallen leaves, and the moon cast a silver glow across the neighborhood, creating a surreal stage for the events that were about to unfold. Jared sipped on a lukewarm cup of tea, feeling the adrenaline settle, as he listened closely. "I bet we can get at least 5 things before anyone catches us," Kyle exclaimed, his voice filled with both bravado and a hint of hesitation. "Shush. Keep it down. We can't wake everybody up," Jake scolded, attempting to shush his more boisterous friend. Jared's lips curled into a smirk. He had to admit, he was impressed. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and a part of him couldn't help but admire their ability to turn a chaotic situation into a game. Little did they know, however, that Jared had just begun a game of his own. The ultimate challenge he had created was about to reveal their true colors. The first noise to catch his attention was the dull thud of footsteps moving down the sidewalk. Jared leaned forward, straining to catch every word. "All right, what's our plan?" Kyle asked, a hint of excitement bubbling in his tone. Jake's whisper cracked through the cool night air. "Let's start with Mrs. Granger's gnome garden. She hasn't been home all week." A gnome garden? Jared couldn't help but chuckle. It was a brilliant first choice. Mrs. Granger loved her garden gnomes, and they sparked a claim of loyalty she held dearly. A path of irony already began to weave through the plans of these boys, and Jared felt a sense of anticipation build. "Just, grab one of the little guys, right? Easy." Kyle trailed off before turning serious. "But we have to be quick. The last thing we need is the old lady waking up and catching us red-handed." Jared smiled at how naive they were about the unsuspecting gnome god standing sentinel in Mrs. Granger's garden. The challenge was simple: retrieving one gnome without attracting dire repercussions. He knew there'd be a ripple effect if they started to disturb the peace, one that they would greatly underestimate. "Okay, we're going in," Kyle whispered sharply. Jared, heart racing and ready for the events to unfold, pulled out his phone once more, prepared to capture everything. As they skulked down the street, Jared snapped a few photos, documenting their every move. Laughter bubbled up inside him. These snapshots weren't mere photographs, but lessons, stories he would recount later when the sun illuminated the quirky sketches of the night. He watched the duo approach the garden with slinking movements that reminded him of his childhood antics. The joy of adventure seemed pulsing through their veins, but they quickly became nervous once they stared down the lane adorned with colorful gnomes, each one more ornate than the last. "Do you really think it's okay to take one?" Jake hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. Jared squinted through the darkness, finding the flicker of concern tugging at Jake's brow. "Come on, just grab one," Kyle urged, pushing Jake forward. "What's the worst that could happen?" In an impulsive moment, Kyle darted forward, his movements swift as he reached for a gnome with a bright blue cap. "Got it," he said triumphantly, clutching the porcelain figure, as if it were a trophy. Jared felt a thrill ripple through him. This was where the real lesson began. While they shared laughs on their midnight escapade, the implications of their actions swirled in the air around them. There was much more at stake than mere gnome theft. Just as Kyle began to pull back, a slight rustle in the bushes brought Kyle's celebration to a sudden halt. Their laughter faltered, replaced by a tense silence as shadows loomed heavier around them. "Did you hear that?" Jake whispered, looking alarmed. Jared's heart raced as he realized they might have lifted the veil of innocent fun and passed into a realm where fear and consequences collided. He felt a rush of anticipation, sensing their excitement teeter on the edge of fate. But what happened next surprised him. Before Jared could raise his phone in readiness, a mischievous raccoon appeared, dashing out from the bushes, knocked the gnome from Kyle's hands, and scampered away with it in its little paws, navigating through the darkness with remarkable speed. "Hey, get that back!" Kyle yelled, completely flabbergasted. The boys bolted into action, chasing the raccoon down the street, their initial plan now thrown wildly off course. Jared couldn't help but laugh quietly to himself. This was not how he envisioned the first round of his game unfolding, but the spectacle was too amusing to ignore. He snapped photographs of the frantic duo as they darted after the furry thief, their determination evident in their every step. "Why is it always raccoons?" Jake grunted, stumbling over his own feet. "Just keep going. We have to get it back," Kyle shouted. Jared followed the chase, peeking around the corner of a nearby tree. He could hardly contain his laughter as he captured the moment, a confrontation between a raccoon and two frantic teenagers, utterly unprepared for the absurdity of their situation. The raccoon zigzagged down the block before darting into an alley. The boys stumbled to a stop, panting heavily, hands resting on their knees as exhaustion crept in. "What now?" Jake gasped, glancing over at his partner in crime. "Did we lose it?" "I'm not going down without a fight," Kyle declared, wiping the sweat from his brow and jerking his head toward the alley entrance. "We have to follow it." And just like that, they trekked into the dark alley, shadows playing tricks on their young minds. Jared trailed behind, not wanting to lose track of the lesson brewing just beneath the surface. The alley was narrow, littered with garbage bins and the remnants of late-night revelries. The unexpected peek into their chaotic natures was rewarding, and Jared's phone clicked away. To be an observer felt empowering. It was odd, the mixture of voyeurism and a growing sense of camaraderie. But distance was fleeting, as he listened to their breaths and scattered footsteps collide with the impending consequences of their actions. And somewhere in him, the hope that fueled Jared's heart became clear. By the end of this night, Kyle and Jake would emerge with a kind of wisdom that couldn't be taught in classrooms. Finally, in the depths of the alley, the unmistakable sight of a raccoon basked in the glow of a soft streetlight brought a fresh wave of adrenaline. The creature stood atop a pile of old newspapers, proudly displaying the stolen gnome as a trophy. "Come on," Kyle shouted, and without a second thought, he lunged forward, hands outstretched. Jared, too, inhaled sharply, feeling the swell of anticipation and the reality of the situation colliding. "Wait," Jake hissed, halting Kyle in his tracks. "Why? It's just a raccoon," Kyle protested, his eagerness faltering. "Remember what we're doing here. It's a challenge." "It's about strategy, not brute force," Jake suggested, gathering himself as he began to adopt a strategic mindset. In that moment, Jared pondered how far they had come from their initial antics. The chase had transformed not just into a scrambling pursuit but a tactical endeavor, illustrating the bond forming between the boys, a bond littered with lessons learned through spirited effort. "Okay, then," Kyle conceded grudgingly. "What's the plan?" Jared held his breath, realizing it was now or never. The time had come for him to intervene. He stepped forward, clearing his throat to disrupt their youthful plotting. "All right, you two. Maybe it's time to think a little more creatively. I'll give you a hand." Kyle and Jake turned, momentarily startled, but then they recognized Jared. "You," they squeaked, their surprise merging with apprehension. "Let's make a trade," Jared suggested, feeling the connection tightening among them. "If we work together, we can negotiate, right? I have a solution that allows all of us to leave this night with something." Their eyes widened in surprise, but curiosity began to edge out self-defense. "Trade," Kyle echoed tentatively. "Exactly. You two can approach the raccoon with a deal, and I'll help you distract it while we do a careful exchange," Jared proposed. "You'll have your gnome in hand and a story to tell, and the raccoon? Well, it can enjoy its newfound treasure for another night." Kyle raised an eyebrow, a mixture of disbelief and consideration flashing in his eyes. "What's in it for you?" "Nothing extravagant, just the joy of watching you succeed, and possibly some redemption for those pumpkins," Jared replied, a playful challenge twinkling in his eyes as he gestured to the raccoon. Jake turned to Kyle, contemplation flickering across his face. "What do you think? Could be fun." "Fine. Let's do it." Kyle agreed, determination now infused within him. "All right," Jared said, his voice dropping into confidence as the three of them devised a plan. Under the soft glow of the streetlight, a strange bond began to form, tapping into the uncharted territory between them. Together, they approached the raccoon, Kyle's tactical instincts surfacing along with Jared's cunning outlook. As they inched closer, Jared let out a trail of breadcrumbs, old chips, and watched as they led away from the gnome. The raccoon seethed with curiosity and quickly descended from its perch, temporarily distracted by the sudden treasure trove. "Now, go," Jared called, and together they snatched the gnome from the base of the newspaper pile. Victory felt sweeter than anticipated, shed across the unlikely comrades they had become. Howling with laughter, they bounded back down the alley as the raccoon innocently tore apart the faux bounty. Freedom echoed in thundering steps, a mad dash that sent a rush of adrenaline through their veins. As they rounded the corner back out onto their street, panting and out of breath, Kyle looked over at Jared, his eyes shining with disbelief. "I can't believe we actually did that." "You could have gotten caught," Jake added, relief flooding his tone. "And yet we managed to walk away with the spoils," Jared chuckled, holding the gnome high like a trophy of battle. "But remember this moment. The thrill came from teamwork, strategic thought, and some creativity." Their laughter faded into groans as they collapsed in a heap on the grass outside Jared's house, gasping for air. "You really think we learned something here?" Kyle asked, his breath still hitching between words. Jared nodded, basking in the cute irony of their midnight escapade. "Absolutely. Sometimes, the consequences we seek in pursuit of fun can enhance the joys we take for granted. You two set out for something to amuse yourselves but have come away with an undeniable experience, a tale for the ages." The boys exchanged glances, and Jared felt a sense of triumph. He had envisioned tonight as a lesson in accountability, but he never expected it to blossom into a connection that defied their past. As the moon grew dimmer, and stars began their journey across the sky, the sense of newfound respect settled comfortably. Kyle turned to Jared, eyes glimmering with an understanding that hadn't been there before. "We're sorry about the pumpkins, Jared. I didn't realize how much effort you put into those until tonight." "Yeah, it's about understanding the choices we make," Jake added, his voice somber. "Thank you for helping us see that." With the gnome cradled safely in his hand, Jared raised it as a silent toast to their unlikely alliance. "Just remember, tomorrow's a new day, and we can either let chaos reign or work together to create better memories," he said softly, heartwarming joy coursing through him. The boys nodded, the lessons of the night resonating deeply. Together they lay sprawled beneath the starlit sky, sharing stories, dreams blossoming under the shimmering constellations, and newfound respect linking them to the heart of their community. In that hour of self-discovery, the chaos of the night had transformed what once was a conflict into a collective embrace, a shared understanding reminding all that beneath their playful facade lay a responsibility to one another, threaded through laughter, chaos, and the bonds formed in the shadows of every reckoning. In that hour of self-discovery, the chaos of the night had transformed what once was a conflict into a collective embrace, a shared understanding reminding all that beneath their playful facade lay a responsibility to one another, threaded through laughter, chaos, and the bonds formed in the shadows of every reckoning. As they lay collectively under the blanket of stars, a hush fell over them, the silence lingering like the sweet perfume of summer nights. The warmth of camaraderie tucked them in, wrapping them in a shared promise, a commitment to their newfound friendship. Kyle was the first to break the comfortable quiet. "So, what's next?" he asked, glancing at Jared, eyes glinting with curiosity. The question seemed to linger in the air as he leaned up on his elbows, the wonder of possibility dancing across his face. "You have to admit, this night turned out to be way cooler than playing pranks." Jared chuckled softly, rolling the gnome thoughtfully in his hands. The porcelain figure gleamed in the moonlight, a trophy not just of mischief but of a lesson learned. "Well, considering the night is still young, it might be time for another challenge," he replied, mimicking the spark of adventure they had chased earlier. "But this time, let's keep it fun and productive. How about we do something that adds to our neighborhood instead of taking away?" "Like what?" Jake asked, cocking an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but caught off guard by the shift in tone. With a grin, Jared leaned back, feeling the earth beneath him while surveying their surroundings. "What if we decorated the neighborhood for Halloween? We can gather supplies, use these gnomes as inspiration, and it would honor the playful spirit of the season." Jake perked up. "Are you saying we should set up a mini haunted house or something? Because that sounds epic." "Exactly. We could use our skills to create something everyone in the neighborhood can enjoy," Jared elaborated, the idea spilling from him like the creative tide he hadn't realized he was holding back. "And that means using those pumpkins too. They don't have to end up in the trash." As the southern breeze stirred the leaves overhead, Kyle and Jake exchanged electric glances, their excitement building in a palpable crescendo. It wasn't just an idea. It was an adventure in the making, a chance for all three of them to contribute positively. "All right, count me in," Kyle said, raising a fist as silently as possible with excitement bubbling within. "Mine too. I can't wait to gather things and make this happen," Jake added. Enthusiasm bloomed brighter than ever before. "Then let's get organized," Jared said, now fully animated. "First things first, let's break into smaller teams. Someone can handle decorations. Let's spread the word and see who else from our neighborhood would want to join in." For a moment, there was an odd silence as they all stared at each other, recognition dawning of just how unorthodox this notion was. The old definition of mischief had twisted to activate the spirit of community collaboration, a camaraderie neither had expected. "Maybe we could even create theme stations," Kyle suggested, bouncing the energy into play. "I could be in charge of crafting the spooky corner, while Jake manages creepy entertainment, like games or those lame ghost stories we tell around a bonfire." "Sweet. I'll oversee the decorations," Jared added swiftly, "and I think I can convince a few other neighbors to lend a hand. We'll need lights, webbing, and whatever Halloween decorations we can get our hands on." As they mapped out their roles, the sky above continued to dim the silver glow of the moon, setting the tone of their newfound purpose. With every passing moment, the transformation from mischief makers to creators echoed louder through their laughter, each idea rolling off their tongues like marbles spilling from a jar. The hours began to bleed together, filled with vivid visions of what their neighborhood could morph into. Jared started to feel the familiar rush of excitement, but this time it held a different kind of energy, one rooted in optimism and connection rather than chaos and competition. "Hey, we can totally hit up Max and Emily," Jake exclaimed, bouncing on the grass, his enthusiasm contagious. "They go all out for Halloween. I bet they'd have a ton of ideas." "Good call. Plus, if we pool our resources, we can do way more than we could alone," Jared said, eagerly pulling out his phone, feeling a new sense of purpose as he jotted down names. With each entry they wrote, their excitement multiplied, led over the conviction that they were setting the groundwork for something far more special, the collective brainchild of a neighborhood community. Once the plan began to take shape, they collected their gathered energies, eyeing the gnome that had brought them together. "What should we do with this little guy?" Kyle mused, gesturing toward it. "He feels like part of the group now. Let's keep him as a mascot. We can set him up at the entrance of our haunted house," Jared declared, raising the gnome like a trophy once again. "He'll watch over our efforts, a testament to our journey from chaos to community." "All right. Haunted gnome theme it is." Jake laughed, high-fiving Kyle, the laughter echoing down the street, causing a few distant lights to flicker in the comforting warmth of unity. Feeling the first inklings of dawn brushing against the horizon, they found themselves standing amidst the remnants of chaos that once was a gentle, glowing transformation. The night would end, but the bonds they forged under the starlight had only just begun, now sturdy like the sturdy gnome they had rescued from the clutches of mischief. As they rose, stretching out their limbs in the early morning light, a shared determination swelled among them, an echoing promise that they would not allow the thrill of chaos to erode the importance of community. Together they stepped into the light, ready to take on the challenge of creating a new chapter for both themselves and others. Tomorrow came with its own adventures, and with it, the collective excitement echoed louder than any reckless chaos from the night before, setting the stage for a spectacular celebration. The night of reckoning had turned into a dawn of creativity, and they were all eager to see what awaited them on the morrow in their underappreciated little corner of the world. The night of reckoning had turned into a dawn of creativity, and they were all eager to see what awaited them on the morrow in their underappreciated little corner of the world. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, the trio disbanded for the day, their hearts brimming with anticipation. In the breezy stillness of the morning light, plans took root in their minds, shaping into something tangible. Jared, Kyle, and Jake parted ways, each tucked within their enthusiasm. They agreed to reconvene later that evening to further brainstorm their haunted house extravaganza, but excitement coursed through Jared even before he stepped into his home. The energy of the night stirred within him, a sense of purpose that felt new, but oh so necessary. As he slid into the comforting embrace of his cozy home, his mind raced with ideas for their community project. Images of ghoulish decorations danced like playful phantoms through his imagination, and he envisioned bat-shaped lanterns lining the walkway, cobwebs draping from trees, and flickering lights that beckoned people into the heart of the haunted house. After breakfast, an idea seized him. "I'll start gathering supplies," Jared said aloud to himself, stroking his chin as if contemplating the mysteries of the universe. A trip to the hardware store should do the trick. So, with a determined heart, he set out to rally up essentials, eager to whip his plans into action. It didn't take long for their neighborhood to wake up, filled with people enjoying the crisp morning air with cups of coffee in hand. Jared found himself inspired as he greeted neighbors, each familiar face igniting a deep-rooted calling to engage the community in good-hearted fun. He approached Mrs. Thompson, who was pruning her rose bushes as Jared passed by. "Morning, Mrs. Thompson. Do you have any old decorations for Halloween that you'd be willing to lend us?" he asked enthusiastically. She paused, glancing at him with that twinkle in her eye that hinted at her past adventures. "Why, yes, dear. I have a box in the attic full of ghostly knickknacks just gathering dust. You all setting up a haunted house, are you?" A grin burst onto Jared's face, recognizing that ripple of excitement within her voice. "We sure are. It'll be a community project, something everyone can enjoy." By noon, the network of good spirits began to build momentum. With Mrs. Thompson's encouragement, a plan emerged. Jared would gather supplies while Kyle and Jake mobilized their friends, allowing word of mouth to carry the message through the neighborhood. They agreed to meet later that evening for a strategy session. As the sky darkened with the promise of the approaching night, their energy pulsated, creating an electric atmosphere in Jared's backyard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow across the scene, the three friends assembled alongside a handful of eager neighbors, all buzzing with a sense of purpose. Adults leaned in to listen, while children hopped from one foot to the other, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. Jared stood at the center, his heart swelling with pride as he shared their vision using hand-drawn sketches he had created while waiting for the world to wake. "This is not just about Halloween. It's a celebration of who we are as a neighborhood. We can put on a show, add a bit of spookiness, and create something that brings everyone together." The group immediately sprang to life, launching into spirited discussions brimming with inventive ideas. Jake suggested a haunted garden for mystery walkthroughs, while Kyle insisted on designing a spooky storytelling corner. The children chimed in with costume ideas for themselves, even discussing who could be the official scare of the evening. With each person contributing, they built endless possibilities as the sun sank deeper into the horizon. The murmurs of brainstorming filled the night with possibilities of laughter, creativity, and a purposeful endeavor that sidestepped May mischief and embraced a vivid tapestry of camaraderie. As the meeting progressed, Jared found himself scanning the crowd, absorbing the enthusiasm that radiated around the table, a flavor of connection he had craved but never fully understood. Building something as a community felt entirely different than the solitary actions of recklessness. Around them, bags filled with decorations and supplies began to pile high, a joyful testament of contributions from neighbors excited to take part in the upcoming festivities. Hours passed, and soon, they decided to break for pizza, a well-earned treat after the whirlwind of ideas and laughter. Jared watched in delight as children plastered together paper ghosts, while adults shared stories infused with the spirit of nostalgia, the kind that made you smile and breathe deeply, drawing you back to childhood thrills. As the lovely night gained momentum, darkness draped softly over them. The moments abstracted in joy as they transitioned from planning to crafting, creating paper bats, cobwebs, and hanging ghosts. Chairs were pulled around tables covered with supplies, prompting collaboration and creativity without a moment's hesitation. Finally, it was time to go home, and with a farewell, they agreed to meet again tomorrow, fueled by their laughter and shared stories as they embraced the magic that wrapped them during their little adventure. That night, beneath the flickering street lamps and whispering trees, the quiet promise of a brighter tomorrow swirled around them like the leaves dancing in the autumn breeze. Jared returned home, feeling a cozy fatigue settle into his bones, but satisfaction filled his heart. In those moments, he realized how easily they had embraced something incredible together. There was a potential brewing in the warmth of community that went far beyond Halloween. As he crawled into bed and closed his eyes, the sweet echoes of laughter reverberated through his mind, wrapping around him like a cherished blanket of friendship. The tale they were weaving was no longer an isolated adventure. It was a collective story they would write together, with every shared smile, every corner decorated, and every ghostly giggle echoing through the autumn air. What started as a midnight scheme had transformed into a living tapestry, embroidered with adventure, connection, and a rekindling of joy. Each day led them closer to their goal of unity, reminding them that sometimes the most hauntingly beautiful moments lie where mischief meets purpose, a journey that they would all cherish for years to come. With those thoughts, Jared drifted into dreams of what the future could hold, ready to embrace whatever new challenges awaited them, knowing that together they would rise to meet them head-on, hand in hand. The end of one chapter only marked the beginning of another, and this time they would write it together, forever entwined in the heart of an extraordinary community.